Well, good day, everyone, and welcome to our discussion on how to find work during a pandemic. My name is Justin Rathbun, and I'm the moderator for our panel today. I know that this is a particularly interesting subject for myself, as well as all of you who may be entering the workforce soon. I'll be listening just as intently as all of you because we have a very distinguished panel with us today to talk about some of the challenges that face the live entertainment industry during this COVID-19 crisis. A bit about me before we start. Again, my name is Justin Rathbun. I am a 2000 Full Sail graduate of show production. I started my career with Holland America Cruise Line as an audio engineer and technician. After moving to New York City in 2006, I toured as the head sound engineer with several Broadway shows all around the US and Canada. In 2008, I was called back to New York City to be the head sound engineer for the Tony Award-winning Best Musical In the Heights. Since then, I have been the head audio engineer on numerous Tony-nominated and award-winning Broadway productions, including the Gershwin's Porgy and Bess, Bengal Tiger at the Baghdad Zoo, starring Robin Williams, Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella, Freestyle Love Supreme, and have been the OG sound engineer for Hamilton since its inception. Almost all work on Broadway ceased on March 11th due to the pandemic. And now to introduce our panelists. Michelle Pettinato is a 1989 Full Sail graduate and a 2015 Hall of Fame inductee. She has been a full-time concert sound engineer touring with some of the biggest names in music since 1992. Michelle has worked with Gwen Stefani and Adam Lambert, Melissa Etheridge, the Goo Goo Dolls, Keisha, Styx, and many, many more. She was most currently on tour with Elvis Costello up until the tour was suspended due to the pandemic. Michelle is the co-founder of soundgirls.org, and in 2019, Michelle created and launched mixingmusiclive.com. Brian Carico is a 1997 Recording Arts graduate and a 2010 Hall of Fame inductee. He is a 20-plus year touring and television professional specializing in lighting and video. He started with Verilight right after graduating, and this is where he landed his first tour with Aerosmith. Brian spent the next 15 years of his career focusing on concert lighting. 7 years ago, Brian pivoted and changed his focus to video, directing live concerts and corporate events. Brian has worked and traveled the world with artists such as Blake Shelton, Sir Paul McCartney, Brad Paisley, and Neil Diamond, just to name a few. Fernando Delgado is a 1997 Recording Arts grad and a 2017 Hall of Fame inductee. He is currently a freelance production sound mixer and recording engineer, and is also the owner of Stickman Sound in Las Vegas. He has won 2 Emmys, the first in 2005 for his work with HBO Boxing, and the second in 2019 for his work with the Las Vegas Golden Knights hockey team. He has also worked on the reality shows such as Top Chef and The Apprentice. He is currently working for NFL Films as Crowds effects mixer for the Las Vegas Raiders. He is a dog lover and couldn't be more excited that German Shepherds are moving into the White House in January. All right, well, let's get into it. I'd like to first rewind a little bit with our panel and get into your careers before this whole COVID thing happened. So if you guys could tell us about your very first gig out of Full Sail before this whole pandemic thing happened. Michelle, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, put me on the spot. That was a long time ago.
Ladies first.
Yeah. Well, I graduated in 1989, and my very first gig was at a tiny little sound company. I was working at, mixing in little tiny bars and nightclubs and working in the shop. I was basically working for free as an intern, and I would work in the shop all week long. And then on Thursday through Sundays, I would go out as like the second or third person on a 2-man show and basically load the trucks, load the vans with all the gear, prep the gear for the show, drive out, set it up, work with another tech, and then come back, unload it, and go back to work the next morning. And I did that for months. And then shortly after that, I moved around a lot. That was in Philadelphia. And then I moved back to Florida and worked at a bunch of nightclubs in Florida. I worked as a stagehand. I worked in the AV department at Church Street Station, which I don't even know if it exists anymore. It was in downtown Orlando. It was a huge entertainment complex. But I basically took every job in audio that I could get. I knew it wasn't my dream job. My dream was to go on tour, but I took anything that was, related to audio and live sound. I even did some assisting in studios. But I just worked around the clock and in every job, getting as much experience as I could for several years before I ended up on tour.
Awesome. Brian, do you want to go next? It looks like we lost Fernando, so take your time.
Sure. Yeah, I started with Verilight right out of school, which Verilight was a company who designed automated fixtures as well as did production. So at the time, they were definitely the bee's knees, if you will, as far as lighting companies go, and on the edge of technology. About 8 months there, I was working as like Michelle, working as the shop kid, cleaning cables, fixing cables, all that. And then about 8 months came around, and I just got a call that, hey, they need a person out on Aerosmith, and it was a great gig, and I got fired from it. So if you get fired from your first gig, it's not the end of the world by no means. But yeah, it was a great first start. I started traveling around and touring, and I still learned a ton from that. But yeah, from there, after getting fired, I just kind of kept pushing forward. And 22, 23 years later, I'm still haven't been fired anymore.
Great. Fernando, were you around for the question? We're kind of talking about how we got our first gig when we got out of school.
When I first graduated, I moved to LA, and I got a job in a recording studio. And so what I did to get that job, I got a couple job offers right away. But what I did was I called the studios. This was before the internet was available. So it was directories of, recording studios in LA. And I matched up my favorites with my record collection, where were my favorite records recorded, that kind of stuff. And I would call the studio and pretend to be somebody that needed to drop something off to the studio manager in an effort to get the name of the studio manager. And then I'd wait a little while, send my resume, and then follow up with a phone call to the studio, but I would ask for the studio manager to make sure that they got my resume, that it didn't just end up in a pile. And then usually I'd just talk them up. I mean, I got my first job because I got a tour of the studio the day before. Because I'd done that, I called the studio manager. He's like, "Oh, we're not hiring right now." And I was like, "That's cool, man. There are so many records like this, and this that were recorded at this studio. I would love a tour if you have the time." And at first he wasn't interested, but eventually he gave in. He's like, "All right, come around about this time." So he gave me a tour, checked out the facility, met some of the people that were working there. And then the next morning he called me and he was like, "I got to fire somebody today. Are you still looking for a gig?" So I was working that night.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And then when I found out that they owned a company, that same studio owned a live company here in Vegas, that's when I was like, "Oh, that sounds cool. I'm going to go do that." So the owner's wife told me if I wanted to move back to Vegas that I had a job. So I moved home and started working there.
Great. Well, now that we've got the first job out of the way, let's go to our current jobs or lack thereof, if we want to talk about it. Fernando, since you were just going, if you wouldn't mind going first and just kind of talking us through where you're at right now and the projects that you're up to, and unless we lost you. No, there you are.
No, I'm here. Sorry. Last time I saw Brian, we had just left Hall of Fame, and I was going to continue on a production for a few more weeks. But we got shut down I think it was in March. And that production picked back up to finish in July. And I've been pretty consistently busy since then. I've had, on average, a COVID test about every 5 days or so. I just had one yesterday, and I have to do another one today or tomorrow for my next gig. My next 2 gigs, actually. But I've been fairly busy. Right now I'm doing the crowd effects for the Raiders games for NFL Films. whenever the Raiders play here in Vegas. And like this weekend, I'm going to shoot a pilot for Bravo for 2 days. It's actually a 3-day shoot, but because I have the NFL, one of the other locals is going to step in on the last day for me. So I'm very fortunate. I've had a spattering of work that thankfully has kept me busy since July.
All right. Brian, do you want to go next?
Yeah, Fernando and I were taking literally the same shuttle back to the airport, saying our goodbyes. I was going back to work with Blake Shelton. We still had 2 weeks left to go on our tour. We squeezed in 2 shows. Actually, we squeezed in a show and a load in because they called a show off after we'd loaded everything in. But until then, the first couple months was, pretty thin as far as work goes. It's definitely has been picking up in the last month for sure. Like I pretty much worked all last month doing an award show. Some network work is kind of going through, which is the nice thing about being where we are now is, if you were clean last week, they want to keep you on. Hope you're clean the next week. Seems to be the vibe going on. But it's what's interesting is I won't say I left doing lighting, but I definitely my 2019 was probably only about 10% doing lighting that year, and now in COVID, that's all I am doing. That's all I'm doing is lighting for television. I'm actually going to go lighting for a corporate event tomorrow, where it's a multi-location webcast pretty much. So the work has changed a little bit. It's work I've done in the past. So it's definitely good to be multifaceted, I feel. Not just in a pandemic, but anytime, anything you can be more versatile or give more to a production, I think you're more of a greater asset. But it's changed a bit, for sure. There's a lot leading up to it. We have to do a lot of things that are what would normally be hey, let's go get together and talk about this is now over the phone. Matter of fact, the last award show I did the shoot time was over a month long, and I was the lighting gaffer on it. And we had a second lighting gaffer, and we actually leapfrogged each other. We never saw each other until the last show because it was one of the bigger ones. But we did that purposefully because if, one of us did show positive, someone else could come in and do the job. So we were definitely had to be more, we communicate a whole lot more between her and I because we had to. I pretty much knew everything that was going on the job she was doing. She knew everything that was going on with mine. So she could literally come in. We both had to continually be tested the entire time. So, that's just a game that we played, and we did not have to use it. We were both stayed healthy the entire time, but that's kind of the way we've started doing things.
All right, Michelle, your turn.
Well, for me, I've spent most of the last 30 years, I spent about an average of 250 days on tour a year and mixing live concerts. And since that's basically ended because of COVID, I've been home since March 16th and probably the longest time since I was in high school that I've spent in one place. I was on tour mixing Elvis Costello when COVID hit. We were in the UK in February and March. And we almost were able to finish our tour. We were just ahead of it, but we had 3 shows left to go when they were going to stop flights from the UK to the US. So we had to come home. And I was working with him since last year and was going to be working with him through April. After that, I was scheduled to do Blink 182 for the summer of this year. So all of that just, disappeared once COVID hit. And since I've been home, I've been kind of pivoting into education. I've been doing a ton of webinars, online Zooms and panels, and also creating online courses for audio and music production, which is what I've been doing with my time since then. And just, hoping that things will soon eventually get back to somewhat normal and get back on the road.
Yeah, I hear you there. For me, Broadway shut down on March 11th, and there has not been anything since. The latest thing from the Broadway League is that there's nothing. All tickets have been refunded through May 31st, so the earliest is June, of next year. So I feel you there, and being here in New York, it's very difficult right now, just because there are so many stagehands and theater workers and live event professionals looking for work that it's very difficult if you're already in an established job, such as Hamilton, where I'm working. That the people that freelance a lot end up getting a lot more gigs than the people that are fixtures in their respective jobs. That being said, does anybody have any individual experiences in the job climate that they'd like to share with the group that other than COVID testing? Obviously, that's like a big thing right now. But any individual experiences on any job that you're doing now that may provide some levity to things right now?
Well, I think what Brian said earlier was pretty key, is being versatile, being able to kind of adapt, and being more valuable to your client is what's going to keep you working.
Yeah, I've seen also a lot of people, try to resist what's happening, resist with the safety measures. And honestly, it's not really a matter of what you believe was going on with it. It's just a matter of that's the situation we're in now, and that's the safety measures that's been set up to do a show. I remember when I first started in the industry, for example, climbing harnesses was on the kind of half and half. Some people were wearing them, some people were not. You have guys in the air, 70 feet in the air, not even wearing a safety harness. And there was people who gave resistance to it. And there was just situations I gave resistance to it because the safety harness was not, it was actually causing more problems, which it was, but, I could not just not wear the harness. So I had to kind of modify, maybe buy some different equipment that I was using, or maybe do something a different way. But regardless, it is a situation at hand, whether you're for a mask or you're against a mask. You go on the job site, it's what you need to do the job. If you don't like the rules, you should go find somewhere else to work, I would say. Because there's no need to argue about it, especially once you're on the job site. Once you're on the job site, you've agreed to the stipulations that's placed before you. Everyone's very upfront with what is expected from everyone from a standpoint of safety these days, for sure. If you don't like it, you should probably not take the job. It's just really that simple. And if you do agree to the job, the job place is not the place to really argue about it. So, you kind of think about that going in. Now, that also goes towards anything beyond safety, beyond COVID. An argument is in the middle of the arena floor is not the place for it. Definitely remove yourself and go voice your differences somewhere else. But that's the kind of things I've seen. Some people resist, some people don't. People that do resist, it honestly does no good. It actually does more harm. And if you do have a beef about it, you should talk to someone about it in private, not out in the open. I've seen that from COVID officers as well. The guy yelling across the arena floor to a guy, calling him out by name, "Put your mask on," was probably not the best thing he could have done. He could have walked the extra 75 feet over to the guy and say, "Hey man, you need to put your mask on." And people are understanding. You're working. Sometimes masks slip down. Sometimes they fall down. I mean, I was walking backwards on a set of stairs that was full of lights. So I took my mask off because with an N95 with a big bird nose point on it, I had to look down below. So I slid my mask down so I could see, so I wouldn't fall. And the guy's like, "You got to put your mask on." I was like, "I will put it on as soon as I'm at the bottom stair. If you need to clear people out, go ahead. But there's still safety around." So that's just one thing I've noticed. Definitely either agree to what's placed before you step on site.
I think that, it's kind of just another regulation at the moment that we have to deal with. It's a couple years ago, it started to become a mandate in a lot of venues that if you're on the floor when there's riggers in the air, you must wear a hard hat. And a lot of touring crew fought that because we don't carry hard hats, but the venues would hand them out. It's like, if you're on stage and there's a rigger above you, you're putting a hard hat on because, people are getting injured or, worse. So it's just the adjustment period of, okay, this is what we have to do now. Same thing as dealing with a dB limit in venues. It's not something we want to, we enjoy, but it's the way it is and you have to deal with it. And that's part of the job. So in this current climate, it's just what we have to do. And if it means actually having a gig and working, then going through a little, something that's a little uncomfortable or whatever, either you want the job or you don't. And I think, expanding on what you were talking about, when you agree to a gig, it's very important that when you're negotiating that job, especially if you're an independent contractor, that you are clear on what's expected of you and what you're going to be doing and what they're expecting of you. And, down to your pay, your travel, your expenses, your rooming situation. You need to clarify all of that up front and make sure that you know what you're agreeing to, because when you get out there and you're mid-tour and you're not happy, well, if you agreed to this, that's, you made your bed. You've got to sleep in it. But work that stuff out ahead of time, because mid-tour is not the place to be, changing your mind about what you agreed to, and that realizing I don't like this tour and I don't want to be here. And now I'm miserable. I know I agreed to it, but that's not the place. You either agree to the tour and you do it. And when the tour's over, don't come back if you don't like it. But, you don't get into arguments mid-tour about stuff that you agreed to when you got the job.
I couldn't agree more.
Yep, I agree as well. I think this is a good time to maybe jump into what we've had to relearn or learn to adjust to the current state of affairs. I think Michelle might be in a very unique position to where she's actually created some training videos. So if you don't mind going first and maybe just going through some of the stuff that you may have had to relearn, or some of the resources that you may have used to further your career.
Well, yeah, I've just kind of completely pivoted because I live in Scranton, Pennsylvania, so there's no local work. There's actually, some people in bigger cities, some sound engineers that are touring sound people have managed to find work at local churches, doing streaming, working at TV stations, because broadcasting is still happening. So there is work for, sound engineers in certain areas of the country, but not where I live. There is nothing happening. So what I've done is last year I had started creating online digital courses for audio and music production. And it's been learning the, little bits of technology, but learning how to put all of this together and build a product, basically build a business. I've been an independent contractor my whole life. I've been freelance. So I'm kind of my own product, but, building a digital course and creating the content and then marketing that has been a whole huge learning experience for me. So that's been something that, it's you just kind of have to pull on whatever bits of experience and knowledge you have. And then, whatever you don't know, you find out who knows and that can teach you or where you can learn. And I think that goes with, even people that I know who started getting into live streaming. It's not something we generally do on the road. If you do, there's usually a crew that handles that. So it's a matter of learning how live streaming works to do live streaming from a church and keep working. So, you just find all those other skills, those latent talents and skills that you have, that you might have learned here and there years ago, but haven't put to use, and you figure out how to put them to use to do what you need to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Brian, is there anything that you've had to go back and either relearn from either your time at Full Sail or just things that you've had to pick up along the way or something like that?
Well, I took my relearning to a whole new level. I just signed up and am now going through to get my show production bachelor's degree.
Oh, nice.
So I'm actually a full-time student right now currently, which has been great because, when I went 20 plus years ago, there was no such thing as a digital console. It's been nice to learn. I'm a guy who really likes gear, even though I'm a lighting guy and a video guy. I just love gear. I even find it interesting talking about audio consoles. I really don't give a crap about what has a high pass filter, in my opinion. I just want to know how signal goes through it. But I mean, even when I was in school, audio, there was never an art side to audio to me. And there definitely is. It just wasn't my thing. It still isn't my thing. But I still love to learn the gear. I'm learning Vectorworks now, which has been great. It's just been nice to kind of catch up. Going back to school full time it's freaking hard. I'm not going to lie. I mean, even I've been in this business 20 years, and it's not easy, especially trying to teach an old dog new tricks. That's definitely a thing. I remember my first class, so the teacher's like, this is really just kind of review for most of you. I'm like, yeah, review from 20 years ago. But, it's, I get it. I literally feel where everybody is right now. The first time I went to school, I was not a dad. I wasn't a homeowner, and I was just, an idiot 21-year-old. But, now life is different. So, I've definitely taken advantage of a lot of the free online learning that's going on. I've definitely tried to increase my knowledge, so when we do open back up, the industry opens back up to full capacity. I want to be a better person. I want to be a better asset to the business than I was when it shut down. And that's really the kind of the motto I've taken to it.
Absolutely. Awesome. Fernando?
Well, I actually started it like a new arm or a leg for my company. All the location sound recording, all the live events and all that stuff went away. But a couple of my friends and I were having conversations at the beginning of the shutdown. One person worked in music recording, one person worked in gaming, but they both had the same problem that they couldn't get recordings done. So I built a remote recording system that can deploy to a talent's home, and the engineer can operate remotely. So I'm just finishing up the packaging, like how this thing is going to travel over the next couple weeks. But we've already done a bunch of demos with a bunch of independent contractors and a couple large companies as well. And my hope is, I'm kind of looking at this COVID thing as nobody really gets like a full shutdown, right? In their life. It's usually like once you graduate and get started with your career, it's balls to the wall until you either retire or die. And I'm looking at this as my halfway point. I've been doing this for 20 years. I hope to do it for at least another 20, but I'm using this as an opportunity to kind of steer the ship a little bit more. The first 20 years of my career have been very much by chance, and I'm grateful for all that I've been able to do. But the next 20 years, I want to have a little bit more control of it. And I didn't realize until the pandemic how much I miss being in the studio. I didn't think I had the temperament or to sit in a box for hours and hours and hours and hours. It's one of the reasons why live really appealed to me. But now in my oldness, I'm learning that it's really a wonderful place to be, and I can be in here for days and not realize how much time has passed. So I'm hoping that this remote system will kind of help me move into a little bit of balance between studio life and field life.
Also, to tag onto that, a bunch of the Hall of Famers, we had a virtual fire pit Zoom
That's where it
meeting one
came
night. And I remember being on the call that night, and it's been really cool to watch Fernando's project go from literally the light bulb went off stage to seeing the reality of it. It's been really cool. I think it's really awesome.
Yeah, that's where the inspiration came from, was that fire pit. Freaking light bulb went off in my head.
That's awesome. And now you've made a business out of it. So, I mean, it's like you're having to innovate like in ways that we never thought we would have to.
My point to that also, that was a group of people from all realms of studies at Full Sail. It wasn't just the sound guys talking to the sound guys. It was the game guys, the sound guys. It was a group of people. And that's really, when it comes to networking, that's really where your networking should be, not just within your own group or your own degree of study, but expand it out, because it only makes you stronger and makes the group stronger and better.
That's a great point too, like networking. My first tour came from a classmate in Full Sail, a guy that I became friends with when I was at Full Sail. And 3 years later, he was on the road with a band and wanted to go home and offered me the gig because he knew I wanted to go on tour. And my last tour came from Sebastian Christ, Full Sail Hall of Famer. He was recording Elvis's most recent record in the studio, and Elvis is like, I need a sound engineer, and Sebastian recommended me. So Sebastian and I have known each other, but we're not close friends. It's just you have no idea where your jobs are going to come from. So right now, when you're in class or in your Zoom meetings with all these other students, that's your network. That's how you start building a network. And in this business, so much of the jobs come from someone especially on tour. It's a very small circle of people. People hire who they know and who they can trust and rely on, because the job, you're out on the road. There's no one there to take over if you need a sick day. You don't get sick days. So you've got to do the job. And if you can't do the job, there's not someone out there who can do it for you. So there's a ton of responsibility that comes with it. And that's why people tend to hire people they know rather than take a chance on someone they've never heard of. So it's very important to network and build that network of people that know you, know your abilities, know your personality, and know your skills. And somewhere down the road, one of the people that you're sitting next to in class could be calling you for your dream gig. You have no idea where that job's going to come from. So make it a point to really work on networking.
And I know the career development team doesn't like when I say this, but I filled out 3 resumes my entire career. One of those was to get my very first job, and the other 2 was because I already had the job, and they said, we just need something to put on the file. But that is definitely, like Michelle said, that's definitely very particular to the live industry. I'm not sure about Fernando's, but I'm sure it's pretty much the same. Everybody wants to work with someone they enjoy working with.
Yep. And somebody that can handle the job. If you're not good at dealing with people, it doesn't matter what your mix sounds like. Because there's always going to be somebody, whether they're directly part of your team or just part of the ensemble that production is put together, that might rub you the wrong way. And if you can't handle that, then you're the person that's not going to get the call back usually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really important too on the road. It's personality is equally important, even maybe more so than your skills. I mean, you need to be able to do the job, but if no one likes working with you, you're never going to work. You have to live with people in tight quarters on a bus and spend 24/7, with people for months at a time. And if people don't like working with you, you're not going to work very much.
Yeah, you also get a lot more grace when you do mess up.
Yeah.
If everybody likes you, if you've got a crappy attitude and you screw up, everybody's going to be like, this guy can't do his job. Let's get rid of him. Whereas if everybody loves you, a couple people might come forward and show you what you did wrong so that you can keep your gig. I've seen that happen a lot.
Right. And that also goes to, finding people that you can ask for help. Like if you don't know something, find somebody that does and ask them for help. Don't come out of school thinking that you know everything that's going to be happening once you step foot on a stage, behind a mixing desk, behind a lighting desk, behind a video desk, whatever. I think it's really, really important to have peers and also even coworkers or mentors that you can go to ask those questions if you don't know the answer. Because if you're just spouting whatever somebody told you, that doesn't always work.
I would tell the very first thing I talked about, when I got fired off my very first tour in my intro, it was not a situation. I was way over my head. I knew it. I didn't want to say I quit, but days off, I would literally in my mind think, if I could somehow break my leg, I could go home. And it's not a real healthy way to be working when you're having thoughts like that on your days off. But, I knew it. Everyone around me knew it. And, my crew chief and the lighting director at the time, or he's the board op, he came to me and says, we're going to have to make a change. And I'm like, it's the best news I've heard all day. He's like, well, I'm glad you're taking this so well. I know we chat a little bit, but at the end of the conversation, I just say, hey, can you do me a favor tomorrow or the next show we load in and the new guy comes out, can you just show me everything I did wrong and show me how to make it right? And he's like, yeah, absolutely, which that kind of led to some more conversation. But, 5 years later, I was the crew chief on a tour that guy was coming in as the programmer. He said, I thought you quit. My response was, well, not only do I suck at lighting, I suck at quitting. So, we've been great friends ever since, and we still are. But, I've had moments where I fat fingered and deleted 17 lighting cues right before doors. I went to delete Q 1.7 and deleted Q 1 through 17 somehow. Same thing. The director, I called him up and said, yeah, I've made a mistake. And I went back to my last save and this is where I'm at. I just need to bang these cues in real quick. His response to me was, Brian, I'm really surprised how calm you are being through this whole thing. My response to him was, I'm really surprised how calm you're being through this whole thing. But it happens. We all make mistakes. And when people see that you're earnestly trying your best, and we're all going to fall, everyone's willing to help in. And if you're the guy that's the guy no one really wants, they're wanting you to fall. They're wanting you to fail because, man, just get rid of him. Hopefully we get someone else in here.
Yeah, it sucks when you have somebody that has a shitty attitude and they're really good. Nothing irritates me more because it's just like, oh man, this is going to be a great show. And I hate standing next to you during this because you're such a negative individual.
Right. And that goes, it actually goes back to this is something I was going to say for later, but this is a quote that I got from Jamie Anderson a couple of years ago. And it went something like this. It was like, to work in this industry, you need to do three things: show up on time, do your job, and don't be a dick. Yep. And my observation since then are that people who could do any two of those three will work pretty consistently. Number one is pretty much a gimme. But people that can do all three of those things will never have to look for work. And then also be a little lucky as well. But some people devote years figuring out that the do your job and don't be a dick thing. And that's it's like, if you can just do those two things, then you're gonna continue to work. Let's see. Are there any specific tools that you've had to relearn? I know we all have very different aspects in the live entertainment industry. Brian, for instance, in lighting and video, is there anything that you've had to go back and specifically relearn to do what you're doing right now? Or is there anything you've had to brush up on, or, any software programs or online content or anything like that? Just specifics. So,
the flow was what I had to relearn being off for a while. And I went to my first site survey and I didn't even bring nothing bigger than a 25-foot tape measure. It's like, you should always have a laser measure with me. It's like, what do we need to look at for a site survey? And that was kind of weird after being off for a few months. You kind of learn forgot how to work for a little bit, but that came back. You know, I think also just I sat around a lot. You know, I was a little bit out of shape on my first gig. I was like, wow, this is a lot of work. I forgot about this. You know, so there was a little bit of things, you know, I don't say relearn, but I just kind of got real lackadaisical. And it was really kind of a wake up call, which is, you know, one of the reasons kind of went back to school, because I think I'd done about every free online course there was at that point in the game. You know, and I just needed to know more, and I had to stay active. I had to stay engaged. And I think it was very important. I don't know if it's been relearned, but I've learned a lot of new things. I don't know about relearning, but I've definitely learned a lot of new stuff.
Awesome. Michelle, I know since you've created some stuff, I mean, you might have some insight, or even be able to tell people where to go to look at stuff.
Well, you know, it's funny because one thing, I'm launching a course on EQ and critical listening in December, and it's kind of came out of, that's one of the things that a lot of, you know, aspiring sound engineers struggle with, is learning how to hear frequencies and how to use EQ. And it was interesting to me to it's always been hard to kind of put myself back 30 years ago when I was just starting and figure out, go back to when you didn't know things that now are just so natural, you know, how to explain that to someone who's just figuring it out. But a lot of my peers, like everyone's with creating this course, I've been doing so much more listening than I have for a while. You know, like I always do a lot of critical listening when I'm getting ready for a tour to learn the artist's music. And with creating this course, I've been doing so much of it that it's been great, because it's really been kind of helping me keep my chops up. Even though I'm not mixing, I'm still using those, you know, using my ears and training my ears and using those skills and keeping them current, you know, for when I do go mix again. But a lot of my peers have been like, God, I just want to mix. Like, I'm dying to get on a board. I don't know how I'm going to be able to do this when I go back to work. Well, just listen, just spend time listening every day is huge, you know, because that's a skill that never goes away. And all you need is, you know, your ears and something to listen to. But going back to, as far as like, you know, learning and new skills, like for me, over the years, I was always an analog girl with mixing. I always loved mixing on analog. And when digital first came on the market and into the picture, I resisted it as long as possible. And just because I didn't think it sounded as good as analog, and for other reasons. But you know, unfortunately for the last, you know, 5, 6, 7 years, most of what I've been mixing has to be on digital. But it's just like, you can never stop learning. Like, for an example, like digital consoles, there's so many different brands out there, and everybody has their own platform. You know, there's no consistency among them. Like, everybody does things their way, and the learning curve is huge. But for an example, last year I was in the middle of Elvis Costello's tour. We had a break, and I got hired to mix a couple shows with Janet Jackson. And it was on a console that I'd never used. It was the SD7, and I'd been mixing on Midas for years. So it was, you know, a crash course in learning the Digico SD7 in 48 hours, because I was flying out, you know, two days later to mix these shows. And, you know, it's something that in this business, you kind of have to always be ready to keep learning. You always have to, you know, you never know everything. You never will. And the minute you start thinking that, oh, I know everything, that's when you start to fail. You know, for me, it's like, I didn't know the first thing about how to use that console. Like, I've mixed on Digico on one-offs, but I didn't know the ins and outs of it. So I literally hunkered down in my office for 2 days with an online tutorial and the manual and offline editor, and just dove into it. And that's kind of what you have to do in this business to keep current. And even so now with COVID, like, okay, well, if the church down the street is looking for someone to do live streaming and I need a job, well, I'm going to learn how to do that so I can go and work and make some money. So it's just a matter of, you never stop learning. Even once you get out of school and get the gig, there's always something more to learn, and ways that you can improve your skills. And one of the first things I did when I got home was take Smart. Rational Acoustics Smart had an online, I think like a 12-week online course. And I've never used Smart. Like, I'm old school, like, you know, just use my CDs to tune the room. And I've always wanted to learn smart, but I've never had the time to go for the training because I've always been on tour. So I took the online course and it was great. It was like, wow, I finally have time to learn something new. So just, take advantage of that whenever you can, and just keep learning whatever skills that you can to put in your bag of tricks. It'll always help you.
I'll touch on one thing on what I have learned. When Michelle was saying all that, it made me really think about that. One thing I've done is my son and I, we've started to do video editing. And we started with some guys who are drone photographers who never really do much editing, nor are they much audio guys. And they started doing these interviews with people, and people are doing like bios online, since so many people can't really come to the office. They're trying to do bios online to sell who they are. But, we've all heard the line, let's fix it in post, and now I became post, and that really sucks. And it's given me a whole lot more respect for what my sometimes laziness can be on a gig, hoping someone else can clean it up. Not even, on the lighting side, the audio side, the video side, it's, we all kind of came to that cliche of fix it in post. And once I was post, is like, this is not great. If this was done so much better on the front end, this could have been so much better for everyone. But, that's one thing I've learned, how my current job and how it can sometimes affect other people downstream or upstream, or however you may look at it.
Sure, for sure. I just want to go back real quick to something that Michelle said, and that's if you need to go down the road to help the church that needs help with their streaming services, that you're going to go learn that. I would just want to encourage any of the students on the call right now. Don't put yourself in a box like, I'm a sound guy, I'm a lighting guy, I'm a video guy. Be a for lack of a better term, a stagehand. Try to learn all of it. Don't put yourself in a box, or else you're going to find it's going to be that much more difficult for you to find work once this pandemic is over. Because it's difficult right now, even for some of us that have been doing this for 20 years. So I just want to encourage you not to put yourself in a box. Does anybody have any comment on that? But
no, I think that's great advice, because, I think when you're first getting out of school, you look at it like, okay, I have to get the job, and that job is going to be my job forever. It doesn't have to be, it's just get the job, get a job as close to what you want to be doing as you can. Like when I decided I wanted to go on tour, originally I wanted to be a keyboard tech. I didn't want to mix. I didn't want to have that responsibility. I played piano, so I wanted to tech keyboards. And I got the opportunity to start mixing, and that, to me, like I fell in love with it. Like that wasn't my original goal, so you don't know, you might take a job just because it's available and realize, wow, I really love this. So yeah, don't pigeonhole yourself into, this is just what I do, unless you have the luxury of not having to work, to pay your bills.
Exactly.
But when you're trying to work, you just take whatever job you can and look at it as like, I'm going to learn everything I can from this position, because you will always learn something, whether it's people skills or dealing with, politics of the job or technical skills. There's always something you can learn that will take you to the next job. And there's jobs that I had that, looking back now, if I had not done those jobs, there's skills and things that I learned in those jobs that prepared me for jobs I had years later. Had I not done them, I would have not been able to do those future jobs. But so you just don't know what you're going to get out of something and where it's going to take you. So don't be afraid to just be, I'm not going to do lighting. I'm a sound engineer, or I'm not going to do, sound because I'm a lighting person. Take whatever job you can.
Yeah, success is not a goal; it's an evolution. When someone says, you've made it, and I really hate that term, because, okay, well, if I made it, well then what the crap do I do? I don't ever want to make it. I want to keep moving, so that's why it's an evolution, same thing for me. When I wanted to be a designer and a programmer, and I realized once I started programming, I really don't like it. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just evolved. I didn't really ever want to be a video director. That wasn't even on my radar. Video was just barely starting to come into touring. So, but now that's what I do, and I absolutely love it. I don't right now. I don't want to do anything else. because it's what I love. But it's an evolution for sure.
Cool. Let's go. We're going to go ahead and skip a little bit. But getting into the financial considerations that you think that maybe students should be aware of when they get out of school, and how that's going to affect how it's going to affect what they do. If any of you have some insight into that, I know this is a very odd situation to be in, where where the work just isn't magically appearing. But Fernando, why don't you go ahead?
I say this a lot when I talk to students and when I talk to friends. And so I don't have any debt other than my mortgage. And I know a lot of students are not in a position, they have student loans and stuff like that. But my advice is, as soon as you get out of school and you do start working and you're bringing in that income, the first thing you think about is yourself, all of the essentials that you need to survive. And then you pay off your debts as quickly as possible. I have a lot of my friends and peers and think that I'm crazy that I can travel around the world without a credit card. But I've been doing it for 5 or 6 years, maybe a little longer now, without issue. And I think the fact that I don't float any kind of debts whatsoever, instead I save money, that has allowed me to weather this pandemic a lot better than most of my peers. And, my wife and I were just having a conversation. She's a nurse, so she started working more. And then, of course, as soon as work started up for me, I started getting really, I took everything that was coming my way. We've actually managed to save money the last couple months and replenish some of the savings that we used up at the beginning of the pandemic. So, and it really helped us realize that our lifestyle is really the way to go, because we weren't stressed. Like, I can honestly say that I slept like a rock every single night since this whole thing started. And it's because I know that I've got my finances in order.
Yeah, I would second that as well. I mean, our family, we're the same way. We have our house mortgage, and we have a small loan on one vehicle. Our outgoing expenses is not crazy, and it's been really great through this. We've been able to manage to stay where we need to stay. Do we live, differently? Yeah, Amazon does not come to my house on a daily basis like they used to.
Right.
So there's been some adjustments to be made for sure, and we eat home a little bit more, and we've made some minor adjustments, but by just doing that, it's enabled us, the same way. We've not pulled from our savings. We haven't not really put much in it, but we've maintained through this time. We were lucky. We had 2 packages of toilet paper at the beginning of it, so we were good. And I say that jokingly, but I would watch people at the store over toilet paper, and I get it. You take something as simple as small as like, we had like 2 Costco packages of toilet paper. And, for the first time, I really watched how much toilet paper our family uses in a month. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's interesting to know. And we were fine. But, take something as small as that, we were ahead of the game. We were in a good spot to where, it didn't hit us as a blow. Like Fernando said, there's plenty others who have not done that, whether it's their own choice or they've had, some issues in their life that allow them to not have those. But finances is huge. And you're really used to right now on campus, living with next to nothing. And it is nice when, when you do have money. I remember I started doing opening acts and on tours, and they always tip you out money. I remember the second tour I did, I had so much cash, like I couldn't fold my wallet. I'm like, I've never had this moment in my life. It's crazy. And, but I kept the money, I didn't go out and spend it. It was, I paid off my debt as soon as I could. But that is absolutely huge. There's a financial guy, Dave Ramsey. He's based out of Nashville. He always says, live like no one else so you can live like no one else. That's kind of true. Save your money, take care of your debt and your responsibilities first, for sure. And it's definitely, especially in the live industry, it's a very inconsistent, paychecks for sure. They don't come in every week, same amount. You may go 2 months without work, but when I've saved up enough money, as an independent contractor, that's what you call a paid vacation, when you've saved up enough money to live on while you're off work. So.
Right on. Anybody else have any other thoughts on financial considerations, especially in the next, until there's a vaccine, anyways?
Yeah, well, I agree. Second, what both Fernando and Brian have said. Live within your means. It's rule number one. Don't spend more than you make, and especially if you go into the touring industry, because you could finish a 6-month tour, and if you spend everything that you made on that tour, and now you're out of work for 3 months, what are you going to do? So it's very important to keep that in your mind, that make sure you have an emergency fund. Like both of you, my husband and I both work in touring. So we went from a 2-income household to a 0-income household this year. And because we only have a mortgage, we were able to, to survive. And, we cut back here and there where we need to, but we're not in danger of losing our house or having the power cut off or anything, thank God. But, I know a lot of people who have families and have been, touring their whole life and lost all their income and have it's hard when you have a family, when you have kids that you have putting through school and all those expenses. So, just always make sure you have an emergency fund. When you can save, do, and also start saving for retirement as soon as you can.
Yes.
Once you pay off your school debt and you get out of debt, start saving for retirement, because it's the kind of thing you don't really think about till you're maybe in your 40s. And if you wait till then, it's too late. So the minute you have money starting into an IRA, start doing that, because that's just going to, compound over the years and help you out. Because especially if you're freelance, no one else is paying you a pension except for you. So make sure you think about that.
Absolutely. We've gotten several questions online about networking during a pandemic and being able to keep in contact with people once the live entertainment industry really opens back up. I mean, I know there's some things happening, obviously, because Brian and Fernando, you guys are lucky enough to be in there. But any suggestions on how to reach out to future employers or employers that were busy during regular times?
Well,
I would say,
go ahead, Fernando.
I was just going to say these Full Sail networking events are great. They hold them all over the country, and you don't have to be from the city that they're doing it for. So, like as an example, they did a Austin one or a Dallas one somewhere in Texas, and I didn't have anything going on that night. So I popped in and I met a couple people where we had friends in common, and I actually ended up showing them my remote system, and I might have made a client out of it just from, popping into a 30-minute Zoom with other grads. So I would say anything like that would be highly advisable. If you're at home, you have a camera and a computer, go meet people that way.
Cool. And on top of that, is there anything that we should be mentioning or not be mentioning, or, what's the right amount of pressure to apply? Like, does anybody have any thoughts on that? Like, I know obviously like sending emails every day, being like, hey, I'm looking for work. Hey, I'm looking for work. Hey, I'm looking for work is not going to be the way that you're going to get a job right now. Any thoughts on how to, for a new graduate, on how to proceed?
Well, I would say don't do that.
Yeah.
Like if you do that, and I get messages from time to time over social media, or I'll get an email or whatever from somebody, and they're like, hey, I'm looking for work. And I never, ever, ever, ever respond. It just immediately goes into my delete. Bloop, bloop, bloop. I would rather get an email from you saying, hey, I understand that you do this, and like actually think about what you're saying. But I think my advice there would be, don't go in there with the intent to find work. Go in there with the intent to make friends.
Yeah, we talked earlier that, and especially in the live industry, and everybody wants to work with who they enjoy being with. So it's really about relationships. So like Fernando said, you have to create that relationship first. Sure makes that second part a whole lot better. I always, in a normal world, I always said, it's much better to network inside the arena than outside the arena. So kind of going back to take whatever job you can get on the job site, no matter what it is. Because once you're there is when you can kind of have those and make those networking relationships. And like Fernando said, if the guy says, "Hey, I need work," whoa, what? Like, well, I don't even know your name. Like, you didn't even introduce yourself first. Because you just have to. It's really about relationships for sure. And now currently, I'm working with one student I've been mentoring with for a few years. And he moved to Nashville. I mean, literally the week that everything shut down. I mean, so he has a job. He's staying afloat, but like every 3 months, 5 months, he's hitting up some companies that he wants to work with. It's like, hey, I know we're still in it. I'd love. What kind of equipment do you guys have? I'd like to know, maybe brush up on some of the equipment you guys own. So he's taking initiative to talk to them about what equipment do you have. So he's going to do training in the off time. So whenever things are available, he's ready to go. So that's one thing you can do to where it's not just, hey, can I get work? It's like, hey, what kind of equipment do you guys use? I'd really like to brush up on kind of what you guys have. That's another good way to get the conversation started.
There's also, if you're in audio, along with the Full Sail networking events, there's things like Robert Scoville has the lab weekly, and I think it's open for anyone. You just you show up, and Robert has online lessons, and that's a great way to meet other sound engineers or other people who are interested in audio. There's another group of guys that has Mixing Mondays. So there's all kinds of little audio groups, and I'm sure there are for other parts of the industry as well, and Facebook groups where people just kind of get together, have little Zoom meetings and panels, and just talk about, audio, lighting, video, whatever the topic is. So that's a great place to start to just meet other people and to build your network. But again, like both you said, you don't want to just start with, hey, I need a job, somebody hire me. It's building the relationships that naturally lead into you getting a job.
For sure. And I'm sure it's happened to you, and it's anybody and you especially, Michelle, you're sitting back there, you're running your desk during a show, and somebody comes up and wants to talk, and you talk to them, and then all of a sudden they show up your next thing and they want to talk again. And then it happens. I mean, it happens on Broadway all the time with Hamilton. Just developing even a speaking relationship with somebody, and whether it be just dropping an email and being personable, and if you already know the person, not even emailing them and saying, hey, I'm looking for work, being like, hey, how are you? How's your family? Are you guys safe? Approach it as a human rather than as somebody that's like trying to make money. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, we are approaching being on here for an hour, which is absolutely wonderful. I wanted to get everybody's take on the outlook once this pandemic is over. Michelle, is there anything that you're excited about once we are back to work?
I would just like to be back to work. I'm excited that there is some promising news on the vaccine, and there is some promising news from the industry that I've been hearing little whispers that things might actually start coming back earlier than we thought, which would be really great. But yeah, I would just love to get back to mixing live.
Sure.
I'm looking forward to sleeping on a tour bus. I currently run my lawnmower in my garage at night so I can sleep better.
I was saying the other day,
kidding.
someone should make the app that has the tour bus generator sound for people to sleep, for all of us who are, used to that.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to the camaraderie of everyone. And I do. I mean, the pandemic, it has an expiration date on it. It will come, it will happen. As far as students that are coming in, there's a lot of people that have left. There's a lot of people that's not coming back. I've seen and I've met many people. They've found other things, especially people that are around my age where they're like, I'm 45 to 50, do I really want to come back? Do I want to transition to come off the road? I've had that conversation myself because, it's the longest I've been home. Like Michelle said, I've actually have met my neighbors, which is kind of neat. I've come to find out that my wife and kids, they're not all that horrible to live with. I kind of enjoy it. So, there's going to be some people that's not going to return. There's going to be jobs available. And, once the floodgates open, it's going to go. And there's going to be a lot of work. There's been a lot of people that's been, has a lot of content that they want to support. So, just to give you an idea of where the industry was when we left, it was hard to find enough people to fulfill slots on tour. There was just that much work available. And I think it will take a little bit of time to ramp up there, but once it opens, I think we'll be fine.
I agree. Anybody else?
I echo what both Brian and Michelle said. I think the biggest upside to this is technology to do a lot of stuff people were sketched out about has kind of like technology has had an opportunity because of the pandemic to really prove itself. And I think as a result, we're going to see a lot of other jobs that require very similar skills to what we all already do.
Absolutely.
Pop up.
Absolutely.
And I agree with Brian. I think there's a lot of people that have decided that they're going to go do something else that's a little more stable. And it's going to open a lot of opportunities for people that are really hungry.
Totally agree. Where was I going? So yeah, we just talked about all of the job market opportunities. So, there's going to be stuff available in all the big cities once, and don't forget, like there are local unions that you can join that will also, be looking for people because a lot of the union work, even here in New York, Chicago, whatever, a lot of the membership is older. And after not working for, what's going to be nearly probably a little bit over a year, there are going to be a lot of people that aren't coming back. So there is going to be a lot of work there. Let's see. Let's go to a couple questions before we wrap up here. One of the first questions that we got, is there any advice on for being an aspiring tour manager and how to go about that in times such as these?
Well, I think some of the best tour managers I've had, for one, they're not always in the office. Obviously they're getting their work done. They need to. The best tour manager knows the key and essential people on the tour. He may not know the lowest guy on the totem pole, but he knows when his artist has an issue with lighting, he knows who he's going to go to. He knows when his artist has an issue with the monitors, he knows who to go to. It's definitely a sense of teamwork. The tour manager is kind of the one who is the tour manager and the production manager, the two who really help create the lifestyle on the road, or the quality of life, I should say, I think. So, they have limitations too. They have budgets and everything, but, to be a tour manager, you have to really, you're trying to fulfill everyone's needs. And definitely they embrace the human element, I think is what makes a great key to a tour manager. Perfect point. My good friend, his wife went into labor 3 weeks early, unexpectedly. He got a call. He was talking to he went to the tour manager, says, I'm going to have to leave. He says, okay, give me 1 hour. And he says, well, I've already found flights. He says, show me what you found. He says, okay, give me 1 hour. He came back and he says, okay, the artist is coming in on a jet in 2 hours. You're going to get on that jet and you're going to be back home and you'll be at your house and your wife in 4 hours. He's like, well, what about, I can take this commercial flight. He's, what about the cost? He's like, no, we don't miss things for this. That's what's happening. Have things ready to go. You will take the limo back to the airport. And, that was a great example of, those are the people who want to continue to work for you when they understand that. So that's my take.
Great. There's another question that's referring to productions and live events that do we see them continuing to be streamed and produced, and what are the skills that maybe you guys have seen, or maybe other jobs that have opened up since this pandemic that might be good skills for students to learn at this time?
I think that in the beginning, there was a lot of talk about, will streaming replace, going to a concert? And I was immediately like, no way. But then I thought about it and I thought, you know what? A lot of the younger audience, when they go to a concert, are streaming it anyway. They're standing there watching it through their iPhones. So I think there is definitely, there's something is opening up here where there is the potential to expand the live concert experience to streaming, more so than just the occasional pay-per-view. So I do think that this is an opportunity for the industry to create a new experience and a new way of going to a show. So if you think about it, if you're going to pay $150 for a concert ticket and watch it through your phone, well, then why not just stream it at home and not pay that much? There still will always be the people who want that experience, but there is now, we've seen the technology to be able to expand that experience to people who might not be able to actually come out to the show. So I think that's going to create a lot of new jobs and a lot of new positions on tour. So streaming, networking, IT type people, just learning those skills, because that's, it's all about networking, having bandwidth and having, the setup for everything to work smoothly. So, just the skills of being able to be a computer network IT person is going to be huge, and that's going to be a whole new branch of the industry, I think.
I think from my side, what I see, we're already doing iMag to screens. We're literally a couple of boxes in the signal path to stream an event. That's really all we're at. Right. I think it's going to be, my opinion, I think we're going to have a live audience. I think starting out, it's going to be a limited live audience. Having done award shows without a live audience, and they've tried their best to make it happen, like, okay, it's like we all get it. It's not what we want, but even watching an award show with a live audience, we understand how much bigger that is. So, if you just think about some concepts that could possibly happen. So you have a half, capacity, maybe arena where you have a live audience and you have a streaming audience at home. Maybe that streaming audience is only in that region, and then you can also, there's advertisement that can be sold on the streaming side that you can't see live at home. So I think it's definitely going to open up. There's definitely lots of potential. I think it's really an open palette right now, an open canvas for everyone to kind of have some ideas to go through. But, leading back up, going back to concerts, it will be a transition, especially the size of audiences, I believe. We have to have fan confidence that the fan can go to a show and not walk away ill. And we are all, no matter, I was trying to think what degree is offered at Full Sail that is not part of the service industry, and I can't think of any. We are all in the service industry. So the fan is what we have to secure confidence in the most. Is the fan. I think the crew, we've kind of done some things where the crews have gone out. Obviously, Fernando, we see where a place where the crew can go and work and be safe. Now we got to work on the fan to get there. We're starting to see it experimented with the sports. I always felt like live entertainment will follow the sports network or the sports and what they're going to do. But I think it's an open canvas for all kinds of people to understand. Lots of jobs.
Yeah, I think it's only going to expand the business. And as far as the tech and getting prepped for it, I don't think there is any real tech that you need to figure out. I mean, at the end of the day, at least from my perspective, there's microphones, there's mixers, and then there's the destination, whether it's coming out of a PA, going into a recorder, or going out for the world to listen to. And there might be some nuances between those different end formats, right? Same thing with video, right? You've got a camera, you've got a switcher, and then it's either getting recorded, it's getting streamed live, whatever the case is. So I would say the most important thing to know if you're looking to kind of jump on that bandwagon once things start opening up a little bit more is just understand that fundamentally what we all do is the same. It's just our audiences, the people that are viewing and how they're consuming our product that differs.
And the corporate world has been doing this concept for years, where you have a live audience and then you also have a webcast audience.
And that's actually expanded a lot. I've got a lot of friends that have picked up some corporate clients that are willing to dump some serious money into broadcast quality conferences, like virtual conferences. I have a couple of friends that are killing it. They're telling me, I'm never going back to television again. This corporate thing is way better. So, you know, again, people leaving the business, that's going to need to be filled by somebody else.
Great. Before we wrap up, I just want to go through each one of us. First of all, thank you to all of you for being here today. I wanted to get the best piece of advice that somebody's ever given you. And we'll start with Michelle, then go to Brian, then go to Fernando, and then we're going to get out of here because we all have lunch to eat, I'm sure. So Michelle, have at it.
The best piece of advice is to know what success is to you. You kind of have to, everybody has their own version of success and what it means to be successful. And if you're not clear on what that means to you, it's kind of like you need to know the destination before you get there. Otherwise, you're going to be, just wandering around lost. Where if someone's idea of success is making a ton of money and someone else's is being able to travel the world, those two things can coexist together. But you need to know what you're focusing on, and that will guide every decision you make, especially, when it comes to, should I take this job or this job? Well, which one is going to get you closer to your idea of success? So I think you just need to make sure that you know what success is to you, and not just because somebody else thinks it's this, that might not be right for you. So make sure you're clear on what your idea of success is.
Amen. Brian?
Getting a gig, there's really one rule, and it is you must be present to win. So you have to be where the work's going to be. And, like Michelle, she lives in Scranton. She said there's no production work there. Michelle's established, though. She has that option to move. I moved to Nashville right out of the gate because that's where production work was available. Fernando went straight to LA. So you have to be present. You don't always have to be the first place your permanent home is not where you're going to be right after graduation. You have to go where it's going to be. Justin works in Broadway. He lives near New York. He does not live in Kansas,
And I don't live in New York City either. No way.
but you have to be close to where the action is. And so you have to be present to win. And that's what I mean by that. So whatever you're wanting to go into, see where the majority of the body of work is. And that's probably where you should go. But remember, it's not your permanent home. It's just a place to get you started and to grow some roots.
Right on. Fernando?
I thought about this because full disclosure, everybody, we had a little document with a basic outline, and this is one of the things on the document. I thought a lot about this. I've got too many mentors that have told me too many good things, but this is kind of where my head is right now. So I'm just going to give you my personal advice. Be thoughtful. I think right now, more than any other time, it is absolutely imperative for all of us as humans, not just professionals, to be thoughtful about the person standing next to us. One of the things that I've really noticed in my line of work, there's 3 departments in the film and television world that invade a talent's personal space: hair and makeup, wardrobe, and sound. And so I've had to really modify how I work around talent. And as an example, everybody knows me to have this scruffy beard. I did a 5-week show with a talent that I worked with last year. And I knew that COVID was going to be top of their mind, that all safety precautions were going to have to be met. I knew I was going to have to wear a face shield and a mask. And I shaved my beard. Nobody recognized me on the flight. It was awesome. But I did that because my brother would joke around about me having this massive COVID catcher. And although I knew he was joking, I didn't know if maybe the talent would be sensitive to that, right? Like have the same type of thought, but only be serious. So I shaved it because I wanted my talent, knowing that I was going to be invading their personal space every day to put microphones on them. I wanted them to be absolutely 100% comfortable around me. And so I encourage everybody to just be really thoughtful about the people standing next to them. Do whatever you have to do for that person to be comfortable. Thank you very much.
Amen. Right on. Well, I want to thank all of you guys for being here today. This was great. But before we close out, I'd like to also give a shout out to Jason Ferguson, Sean Moore, Tink Abraham, Susan Keller, Mark Johnson for all of their support in preparing for this thing. And also thank you to all you guys. I know we've never met in person, but it was wonderful to get to chat with you guys today. You guys are great.
Likewise, good to see you guys.
And it's awesome. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and good luck with all your endeavors once you graduate. Bye, everybody. Thanks for being here.